Hey, this is Darius from self-archeology.com. In this video, I want to talk about one topic that comes up quite often on my Facebook page, which is responsibility, and more specifically, who is responsible for what in terms of trauma, in terms of inflicting abuse, and healing from that abuse. So I've heard this argument quite a few times over the years. So people say that if you attribute responsibility onto those who are rightly responsible for the abuse, the trauma that you suffered. So for example, if you're a child and you grow up in a deficient, abusive, toxic environment, and you hold the people who were in charge, your caregivers, responsible for that, then you're just kind of avoiding responsibility for your healing process. So you're trying to say, oh, this is my parents who are responsible for all of this, therefore I don't have to do anything to resolve any of this. And of course, nobody actually argues that. I've never heard any serious person argue that, but I've heard this argument as a justification why you shouldn't put responsibility on your parents, because if you do that, you just avoid responsibility. Why are you avoiding responsibility for your life? Just work on yourself, stop blaming others, and make your life better. Why are you thinking about the past so much? Why are you thinking about all these horrible experiences? Why are you blaming your parents? Why are you blaming your siblings? Why are you blaming this? Why are you blaming that? Just get yourself together and become a stronger person. This argument is very common, so I want to address that in this video. So first, I think a lot of confusion comes from the definition of the word responsibility. Let me explain. So, when you are abused, traumatized, when you go through some painful experiences because of somebody else, by definition, that means that somebody else is responsible for your situation. So if you're a child and your parents neglect you or abuse you, or put you in a situation where you are neglected or abused, or suffer hurt in some other ways, your needs basically are not met by those people who are responsible for those needs to be met. So your parents, mainly. Whoever is in charge. I call those people caregivers. So whoever gives care, whoever is responsible for taking care of the child, is in that position to take care of the child's needs. So those people are responsible for those needs not being met and for the consequences of those needs not being met. So if a child develops some unhealthy tendencies, it's who's responsible for that? Well, the parents, the people who were in charge, who didn't meet the child's needs at those particular moments, and over time, the child developed certain tendencies, certain unhealthy habits, behaviors, thought processes, emotional patterns, all of these things that we call unhealthy, that we call PTSD, that we call a response to trauma. The people who were in charge, they are responsible for that by definition of responsibility, by definition of becoming a parent. When you become a parent, you take onto a responsibility to meet your child's needs, because the child didn't ask to be born, they didn't choose to be born, they are involuntarily in that situation and they can't choose to leave that environment and live somewhere else and get a better caregiver. So they are dependent and they are small and helpless, and therefore the caregiver is responsible for meeting the child's needs. So if those needs are not met, then whoever is in charge, the caregiver, is responsible for that. And a part of healing is to recognize that responsibility and to put it where it belongs, onto your caregiver. Now, it is important also to understand that when you are an adult, nobody will take care of you. So you are responsible for getting help, for getting better. Is it fair? Is it how it's supposed to be? No, I would say that people who are responsible for you developing all those unhealthy tendencies, defense mechanisms, behavioral patterns, thought patterns, unhealthy emotional responses, those people should compensate somehow. In the ideal world, they should compensate you for the harm. So if I break somebody's window, I should compensate that person for the window. Seems fair, but that's not how the world works, unfortunately. So you are responsible for getting better yourself, because empirically speaking, nobody will do that for you, even though it's not fair. So I like this example a lot, this analogy. So if you walk down the street and somebody jumps at you and stabs you, takes your wallet and runs away, and you're bleeding, you're laying on the street and you're hurting, well, who's responsible for that situation? Of course, you are not responsible for being in that situation. You're not responsible for being stabbed and bleeding. This is the attacker's responsibility. They are to blame. Blame, responsibility, sometimes people use those words interchangeably. I tend to use the word responsibility. It seems more neutral, although in this scenario it kind of is the same. The meaning is the same. But back to the analogy, the attacker is responsible for you being in that unfortunate situation. It's not your fault. However, he's not going back and calling the ambulance, or she is not gonna call a taxi or somebody else to take care of you after they just attacked you and took your wallet. So who is responsible? Who has the power to do something about the situation to improve it? Well, unfortunately, it's just you. You're an adult. You are responsible for your life now. In terms of making your life better, so you have the responsibility to resolve that situation, to get to the hospital, to ask for help, to go there if you can, to call the ambulance, to call a taxi, to call a friend, whatever you need to do to get better. So when you grow up and you realize that you have a lot of unresolved trauma, that you have a lot of unhealthy tendencies, it is your responsibility. In the same manner, you're not responsible for having all these traits in a sense that you didn't create them yourself. It was an adaptation to your unhealthy environment. However, nobody else is gonna solve that for you. So more likely than not, your parents won't say, "Oh, we messed up. My bad. Here's $20,000 for therapy. Go figure it out. I'm sorry. That sucks. Here's a compensation for it. That's the best that I can do to reciprocate for that situation." That's it. It happens sometimes. Sometimes parents are remorseful and they try to take steps to improve that situation. Not in that way, in my experience. More likely than not, parents will sometimes, in the best case scenario, offer family therapy maybe, but it's more about you kind of figuring out that maybe you have to kind of perhaps forgive them, mayhaps it wasn't so bad, I don't know. It's all complicated. It happened a long time ago. You seem kind of cranky right now. You're going through a phase, so maybe I can help you kind of, become more normal like everybody else. Why are you so upset about it? Nobody else seems to be so bothered. So I guess I can help you with that in order for me to feel better, in order for you to get back to the same relationship dynamic that we had before, where I kind of didn't respect you very much. So that's a very common scenario. The most common scenario is that the parents won't even recognize their responsibility in it, and you will be kind of left alone to figure it out by yourself. So that's the harsh reality, and you are still responsible for making your life better, because just by the very fact that nobody else can and will do it for you, but in your process of healing, it is very important to recognize that you did nothing wrong as a child. You didn't deserve to be abused. You didn't deserve to be traumatized. It's not your fault that you developed those tendencies as a response to an unhealthy environment. So that's all I want to say. If I remember something else important, I will probably make another video on it. It's a very common question, and I wanted to just briefly address it. So that's it for this video. Take care, stay safe, and see you in the future. Hey, if you enjoyed this video, you can help me out by subscribing to our Patreon account, patreon.com/self-archeology. If you enjoy my videos, subscribe to our YouTube channel right here. Give us a like on Facebook, and see you in the future. Bye-bye.